All right. And I still do not see him in the audience, so I'm just going to ask the Streets for All team to be on the lookout for him. I'm going to go ahead and admit everybody, and we'll get started. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. We are missing one candidate. He should be on soon. I want to give a warm welcome to our CD10 candidate mobility debates, and especially to the candidates. Aura Vasquez, Grace Yu, Reggie Jones Sawyer, and Reverend Eddie Anderson. Heather Hutt is ill and unfortunately cannot. I'm sorry, I'm hearing an echo. Do you mind muting yourself? Heather Hutt, unfortunately, is ill. We wish her the best. And Andrew Westall is here from her campaign. So, Andrew, thank you for being here. And we wish the council member good health. I'm going to go ahead and give about 5 minutes of history and context around mobility in LA and specific to CD10. Each candidate will have 1 minute for their opening statements. We'll then go through 7 curated questions that the Streets for All Steering Committee has come up with. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Then we're going to go into audience Q&A. We will post a link to ask questions, and you can upvote other people's questions in the chat. And then finally, we'll have 1 minute each for candidate closing statements. So getting into context and history, some facts about LA you may or may not know. Traffic and the way we get around town is actually really expensive. Our economy loses $19 billion per year by people being stuck in gridlock in Los Angeles. Traffic is so stressful that incidents of nighttime domestic violence actually go up on extra heavy traffic days by 9%. We're so stressed out that it's turning to violence. All of us, by living in Los Angeles, smoke up to 4 cigarettes per day. The LA basin ranks worst in the nation for year-round ozone emissions, 5th worst for particle pollution, and we have one of the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. We used to say a pedestrian is killed by a car about every 3 days. Unfortunately, based on last year's statistics that are just hot off the presses, it's now once every 2 days. This problem is getting a lot worse. If you're in a wheelchair, you have a 36% higher likelihood of being killed in a crash. And our pedestrian fatality rate is 4 times the national average. New York City used to have more pedestrians killed every year than Los Angeles. Unfortunately, that has reversed, and we're now #1 in the nation. The average bus travels less than 11 miles per hour. That's about the same as an average bike rider or scooter rider. And the most amazing stat is 2/3 of all trips made in the city of Los Angeles are less than 5 miles. Half are 3 miles or less. If people had a safe alternative to driving, many would take it. When you add all this up, it's not a very good situation. We have a very polluted city and a very dangerous city for people that just want to get around town and go about their business. And our city has tried to address this over the years, specific to bike lanes. We've had many plans. In 1977, we came out with a plan for 673 miles of bike lanes. We did 5 of those miles, actually got into the ground. In 1996, 1,680 miles were in the bike plan. Only 104 of those miles got installed. The 2010 bike plan was about the same as the 1996 bike plan, and we installed another 100 miles. And in 2015, the Mobility Plan 2035 was passed by City Council. That was 500 miles of bike lanes, and we've done 37 miles to date. So we're great at plans. We're not so great at the implementation. The city currently implements bike lanes in a pretty insane way. The pavement, first of all, has to be perfect. So really, it's only done during repaving. A council office has to be interested. The council office then sets an arbitrary bar on outreach. Some council offices want more, some don't care as much. But regardless, there's outreach. And LADOT can spend months or even years making the council office happy. And then only if the council office is happy and they sign off, a project is implemented. It's literally a block by block process that is quite broken. Citywide, 310 miles of protected bike lanes are planned in the mobility plan. And there's 274 miles of bus-only lanes planned. But we've only implemented 9% of the protected bike lanes. And that's in 8 years in a 20-year plan. and 23 miles of bus-only lanes. That's only 8%. Specific to CD10, there's a little over 12 miles of protected bike lanes planned, and almost 3 miles of protected bike lanes have been built, so that's about 22%. 30 miles of dedicated bus lanes planned, a little under 2 miles have actually been implemented, or 6%. We need to do better. In 2023, unsafe streets in CD10 killed 20 people and injured over 400 people. And you can see all of these dots. The red ones are deaths, the yellow ones are injuries. Some key projects we think are really important coming up in the district: extending the Bayona Creek bike path east to Venice and Cochrane, adding protected bike lanes and bus lanes on Venice Boulevard to Arlington, pedestrianization of 6th Street in Koreatown, extending the La Brea bus lane south of Olympic to Coliseum, flip-flopping the bike lanes and parking on Adams Boulevard to physically protect them. There's enough room. And opening up the gates in Country Club Park so pedestrians don't have to do a huge detour in that area. I also want to mention our ballot measure. On March 5th, Angelenos will have an opportunity to change the fact that the city isn't good at implementation. And if Measure HLA passes, that will mean that the city is obligated to follow the mobility plan anytime they repave a street. We are now going to go to candidate opening statements. This is going to be the order of candidates. Whoever's underlined is going to go first in a particular question, and the underline will just keep rotating. So Aura will go first here, Grace will go first on our first question, and so forth. So without further ado, Aura, when you're ready.
Hi, let me know. Yes, let me know. Hi, I'm Aura Vasquez, and my journey as an environmental advocate became at 11 years old in Colombia after watching a science show on the ozone layer. And my commitment to environmental justice runs really deep. It's been a big part of my life, from leading the efforts to stop Los Angeles' reliance on coal as an organizer for the Sierra Club, to founding Ready to Help Mutual Aid and transforming school play yards into community parks. You know, after witnessing the environmental threats following Trump elections in 2016, I went and led the People's Climate March in Washington, D.C., standing up against attacks on science and our planet. And growing up in Colombia, I watched my mother navigate life on a bicycle, influencing my vision for District 10. I gave up my car at the beginning of the pandemic, and now I drive a moped to lower my carbon footprint and help local traffic. Now, as your candidate for District 10, I envision a future with more bike lanes, free, safe, and efficient public transit, trees, prioritizing people over cars. And my passion for mobility justice is at the core of my upbringing and the heart of my vision for District 10. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Grace, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting us tonight. And really, I so appreciate the stats that you shared, because getting stats is not easy. And the fact is, we've had 20 deaths within CD10 last year and more than 441 injuries. I knew that the fatalities are just too crazy, and we do need to slow things down. So I'm delighted to be here with you tonight to share about how we can actually build more bike paths to slow down the traffic. And I've also been looking at roundabouts in the district so that we can slow down the people who think this is a highway going 90 miles an hour on small residential streets and causing these fatalities. I'm also someone who would be a proponent of making sure that the city will implement the traffic camera so that the speeds will slow down, because we know in CD10 it is a huge issue.
Thank you. Andrew, over to you on behalf of Heather. You're on mute.
There we go. Thanks, Michael. Good evening. My name is Andrew Westall. I'm here tonight on behalf of Heather Hutt, the councilwoman for the City of Los Angeles' 10th District. I'd like to thank the members and representatives of Streets for All and all of the attendees for tonight's conversation. Heather Hutt is the first woman in the history of Los Angeles to represent the 10th District on the City Council, and the road here for her was an interesting one. Heather was born and raised in the district, and as a single mom, she raised her 3 sons here and built her life and career here. As a public servant for over 30 years, Councilwoman Heather Hutt is focused on improving the lives of people who work for a living. As a member of the City Council, Heather is fighting for redistricting and ethics reform, ensuring our mobility plan is implemented, overseeing the development of an unarmed traffic response, implementing climate change initiatives, and making the city affordable for all while protecting our renters. Heather Hutt is here to do the work, and she is not afraid of a fight. That's why Heather supports you and your families, because she sees her family in all of you. I look forward to our discussion this evening and hope you find, like many of your neighbors and friends, City Councilwoman Heather Hutt is the right candidate for the job.
Thank you. Next up, Reggie.
Hi, Assemblymember Reggie Jones Sawyer, representing Reggie Jones Sawyer. I too grew up in the district, rode my bike in the district along Washington and Venice. Used to take that route all the way to, with my cousins, all the way to the beach along Venice or Washington. It's really important, as the LA Times has reported in the paper, that we need to reduce traffic death as it is more than homicides. As the chair of public safety, I am well aware of how dangerous our streets can be, but most important, how we need to be able to implement things. That's why I'm running. The city council makes a lot of plans, and we do a lot of things from the state, and we send money, we send ideas down, but implementation is the key. It's not legislation, it's implementation. That's why I'm running for Council District 10, to make sure things actually get done, as opposed to talking about it again and again and again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Eddie, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Streets for All. And my name is Pastor Eddie Anderson. I'm the senior pastor of McCarty Memorial Christian Church. I'm also a community organizer. And I'm here tonight because while the city of Los Angeles has seen 336 people die this past year because of vehicular collisions, 20 of those people have been CD10, 2 of which died right in front of my church. And my members tried to get CPR and no one was there to help them. We wrote letters to city council and nothing has happened on our street. I'm here tonight because it takes 120 days to fix a broken street light. When we talk about public safety mobility, but if there's not light, it's not safe for young children and women and vulnerable populations to get onto buses. I'm here tonight because there's 50,000 requests to fix our sidewalks. And our sidewalks are a part of mobility. If we can't walk on the street safe, we can't have mobility. So I look forward to our questions tonight to have a livable, safe streets in our community and a better CD10.
Thank you very much. Over to Jenny, who's going to ask our first question.
Thanks, Michael. So the first question is about the high injury network and Vision Zero. A little bit of context. In 2015, former Mayor Eric Garcetti launched Vision Zero, and the goal was to eliminate traffic deaths by 2025. 9 years in, we are actually further away from that goal. In fact, in 2023, over 330 people died on the streets of Los Angeles due to traffic violence, including 176 pedestrians. Compared to the 2021 numbers, this is a 35% increase, which is twice as many pedestrians that were killed later that year in 2015. So despite Vision Zero, the numbers are going in the wrong direction. The city has mapped its high injury network, which are the 6% of streets that account for 70% of injuries or deaths. And in CD10, this includes Pico, Venice, Crenshaw, Washington, Western, Vermont, 6th Street, Olympic, and Normandy. Those are 9 streets. And many of these are designed like racetracks with wide lanes and long blocks. So our question is, what do you make of the city's lack of progress on Vision Zero? And what changes would you make in CD10 to make Vision Zero reality? So feel free to list any specific streets or projects if you have those in mind. And we are going to start with Grace Yu.
Thank you. You know, it's really a tragedy that in the city of Los Angeles, when we say that Vision Zero, I'm having a lot of feedback. Hello?
That sounds good.
Okay, we're much better now. Okay, terrific. So when the city talks about Vision Zero, you would have thought after 2015, the number should come down instead of going up. We have a huge problem where we do not implement. We say we're doing something, but in reality, we don't. You want someone who's in there who's actually going to do the work. I'm someone who's come in. It was after the Willett settlement when we wanted to fix the sidewalks. The city would do things like cut down trees to fix the sidewalk. I'm someone who stood up and said, we've got to save the trees and fix the sidewalk. And ultimately, it was a lawsuit that was won. And then the general manager for Bureau of Street Services says, yes, we'll make that change. I know that when I'm the councilwoman in the office, I will not have to bring a lawsuit. I can say, let's do this, and they'll pay better attention. And we can make sure things are done that need to be done to prevent deaths and to make life safer for everybody in the district.
Thank you. And next up is from Heather Hutt's team.
Yes, so I think we can all agree that Vision Zero has been a real problem and has been a failure. It has not been implemented properly. It has not been funded properly. And there is no vision behind Vision Zero. That is the biggest problem that we have. In fact, we only spend $23 million a year on Vision Zero when we should be spending $250 million a year to actually implement those projects. That's why we have more pedestrian and bicycle deaths this year. This last year in 2023 than we had murders in the city of Los Angeles. It's really, really important. And really, we need more funding behind those transportation projects, and we need more transparency. One of the things that Councilwoman Heather Hutt has done is ensure that we have a 5-year capital improvement plan for transportation projects, because there is no planning for transportation projects in the city of Los Angeles. There is no coordination between street services and DOT on these projects, and we're trying to fix all of those things because you have to start from the ground up and rebuild the DOT before you can actually implement Vision Zero the way it's meant to be implemented.
Thank you. And next up is Reggie.
Really, safety must be paramount in any discussion about enhancing mobility and transportation networks throughout Los Angeles. While the aims of Vision Zero are admirable, it is clear that the program has a long way to go and is way off base. As the former chair of the Assembly Public Safety, I've been committed to ensuring that Californians feel safer in their communities. And really, I'm proud to have worked at the legislature to push for funding that makes our city streets safer for pedestrians and cyclists, including safety projects along Western Avenue. On the City Council, I will work to enact forward-thinking policies that reduce traffic accidents, including greater crackdown on drag and street racing, as well as more resources for speed cameras in high-traffic areas. While there are a wide array of programs and proposals to improve transportation and mobility in cities, the biggest priorities, in my opinion, must be housing and safety.
Thank you. And finally, Pastor Eddie.
I was looking at the mobility plan today, and a quote from a community member stuck out to me. It said, "A livable neighborhood is one you need not fear that your children will be hit by cars." And I think we failed. We failed our community. I've talked to many business owners, many residents in the community, and they say they don't feel safe in the neighborhood. I don't feel safe crossing the street as well. Here's what I would do. On Adams Boulevard, we did the first and last mile on one side of Adams.
All right. Thank you, man. I appreciate you stopping.
What's going on? What side of Adams Boulevard? We did the first and last mile. We haven't done it on the other side of Adams Boulevard, where my church is located, closer to Arlington. We can also make sure on Crenshaw, we can make sure that the bike lanes are extended and people can actually ride their bikes. People like Ride On Bike Shop can actually allow their bikers to get onto the streets as well. We also have to have a capital infrastructure plan for our city to make sure we have coordination between all of our street services and Department of Transportation.
Thank you. And now our next question is over to...
You missed Aura.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aura. Go ahead. Sorry. We'll start the timer.
All right. So I believe that Vision Zero has been an absolute failure, in terms of pedestrian and mobility justice. And, my vision for District 10, especially for cyclists and safety, prioritizes certain things like putting just more funding to this work. And I have been very fortunate to be able to work with the West Adams community to put bike lanes in Adams, and with the business community as well. And the amount of pushback from the community took so much effort and so many conversations and changing so many hearts to make sure that people were comfortable with seeing the vision of having more bike lanes, of having designated, bus lanes also, and that we can have a community engagement process where people can participate and they can also feel their voices are heard.
Thank you. That's all the candidates. And the next question is by Taranig.
Hi, everyone. Riding a bike or scooter is dangerous in CD10. Around the district, people who depend on bikes or scooters to get around navigate a patchwork, excuse me, of mostly unprotected bike lanes that are in the door zone of parked cars or around delivery drivers idling at curbs. Much of the district lacks any bike lanes at all. The mobility plan includes bike lanes on Crenshaw, Arlington, Jefferson, and Wilshire, and protected bike lanes on Venice and San Vicente. Most of the mobility's bike lanes are unimplemented in CD10. Will you commit to implementing the mobility's bike lanes in CD10, even if car lanes or parking spaces have to be removed to make room for them? If yes, how would you deal with pushback from Angelinos that don't want to give up car space and can never see themselves on a bike? Andrew, for Heather Hutt, we'll start with you.
Thank you. So first of all, I would recommend that everyone votes for the Healthy Streets LA ballot measure. Councilwoman Heather Hutt has endorsed the measure, and if you want to get the mobility plan implemented, that's the fastest way to do it. Certainly, we are committed to all of the projects that were discussed on the slides earlier in the presentation, because all of those motions we've introduced and all of those projects we are in the middle of implementing, whether that's flipping the lanes on Adams Boulevard, putting in bike lanes and protected bike lanes on Venice Boulevard, and doing the same thing on Olympic, as well as the Ballona Creek Bike Path extension. I think the key to deal with the community in any of these issues is to make sure that you have folks that are rooted in the community, that are indigenous advocates, and they're the ones actually talking to their neighbors. The biggest problem that DOT and Metro have is they bring in outreach experts that don't understand our community and don't understand the needs of our community, and so they can't relate to them. And so they're trying to push projects on folks that folks don't want because they can't relate.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll go to Reggie Jones-Sawyer. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. I also agree that Healthy Streets LA would prompt the city to better organize street programs and make mobility plan improvements a part of routine road maintenance. I had, and I know we disagreed on a scooter bill that I recently had, where scooters are much dangerous, not only to people that are walking along the path, but also when there were my brother, who's blind, would trip over those. We had an opportunity to not only build more lanes for bikes, but to also improve the ability to have more scooter lanes and also to have more scooters to be able to have scooter bike parts to be able to put them there safely so that we can walk along the roadway. We kind of disagreed back and forth on it, but at the end of the day, I think we all wanted to be able to have these type of transportation vehicles on the road so that everybody can be safer.
Thank you. Over to Reverend Eddie Anderson.
Yes, I would absolutely, to your question, support more bike lanes and protected bike lanes on Adams, on Crenshaw, on Washington, on Pico. Make sure we do that. I think past performance is an indicator of what you would do in the future, and it has not happened in the last 10 years, as long as I've been the pastor of this church. So I think that we will continue to see that in our district. So yes, we need to pass HLA to make sure that we make it a mandate that it happens every single time we repave and save the city money to do that as well. And when community push back, you have community meetings. A lot of times we know that our elected officials in CD10 have been reticent to actually meet with a lot of community members. In my administration, will have co-governance, we'll have community meetings, we'll be able to talk to homeowners, be able to talk to renters, talk to business owners, and negotiate what we need to see happen, a win-win situation, and the best neighborhood benefit situation for our community.
Thank you. Over to Aura Vasquez.
Yes, this is such a great question because I envision a city of Los Angeles and a District 10 that is centered around people and not cars. And I think that this is the challenge. And the mobility plan, the 2035 mobility plan, had a roadmap of miles of bike lanes. But we at the city, we have not invested the funding. We don't take that seriously. There's been issues where we pay by street and there's like not communication among, cities, the different city agencies, making it completely difficult. I'm one that supports protected bike lanes. I ride a bike. I don't even have a car. I take the, public transit. And for me, couldn't be more important because I envision, as a councilwoman, I will make this, my priority. And I don't want, measure HLA is a great beginning for us, but as a councilwoman, I'm committed to doing way more.
Thank you. And lastly, Grace Yu.
I'm really excited about HLA on the March ballot because this is where we're going to actually get miles being put in. As the report shows, you've got 500 miles of repaving done every year by the city. You realize this would allow for more bike paths to be made, more miles than things that we've started from 1977. We can have more than 500 miles. Maybe we'll be able to actually implement and paint 600 miles. And don't forget the 10,750 miles of sidewalks, because we've got sidewalk repairs being done just as well. And 42% of the sidewalks are in disrepair. So we've got a lot of opportunity to get miles of bike paths in. And definitely we've got to build it so that it's flipped, where you've got the car on the outside and the bike paths on the inside, so that it is safer for everyone involved. This is something that I would be happy to support, and I know will make it safer for all residents.
Thank you so much, everyone. Over to Adrian, the next question.
Thanks, Tiernig. I'm going to ask a question about the Vermont Corridor. The Vermont Transit Corridor is a current metro project that would enhance service and travel times on Vermont Avenue between Hollywood Boulevard and 120th Street, much of which is in CD10. This will be done either through bus rapid transit or rail through the corridor. Do you think the Vermont Corridor should have bus rapid transit, light rail, or heavy rail, and why? And we're going to start with Reggie.
LA residents, and really in CD10, should be able to rely on good public transit to keep them moving. Really, this effort ensures that riding a bus is fast, safe, reliable, and efficient in LA. LA bus lanes will improve speeds by approximately 15% or more, increasing service frequently and reliability, as well as enhancing mobility by moving more people without adding more infrastructure. With the opening of these new bus lane, priority lane, LA will have 40 miles of bus priority across the city, benefiting over 8,900 daily riders. Angelenos deserve a transit system that will get them where they need to go quickly, and most important, safely. I think a lot of people don't ride buses because of the fear of safety on those buses. We need to improve that so we can get more right.
Thank you. We're going to take it over to Eddie.
Thank you for this question. I believe we should support the Vermont corridor, and we should do bus rapid transit. Why? Because it's cost efficient, and it also helps the most amount of people in our district. Light rail, heavy rail, while they are fast, help people move quickly throughout the city, the construction time in which it takes to build light rail and heavy rail in CD10 will also disproportionately affect businesses, mainly businesses of color, who have spent other life savings to build these businesses. If you put bus rapid transit and bus lanes into our community, it allows people to move quicker. It takes shorter time to implement, and it makes it more accessible for all, which also lower the bus fares or make zero bus fare for folks who are using this transit line. A lot of folks are near the poverty line or below 50% of the median wage income in our district, where we know 50% or over 70% of our people are renters. It's very important to do bus lanes.
Thank you. And now we're going to take it to Ara.
All right, so first, Metro has already done 2 studies around the Vermont, corridor, both on bus rapid transit and, another one on rail and on light rail. So they're kind of doing feasibility studies right now, and I'm waiting on environmental, feedback. But I believe that especially when we have a city where we're going to have the Olympics in a few years, where we are, as the second largest city in the country, where we should have a top of the line public transit that is free, that is effective, and that is safe, we should start looking into, more rapid transit, like what you guys call here heavy rail or light rail, because we're almost there with the bus rapid transit, and that's not alleviating already all of the traffic that we have in Vermont. And I mean, unifying the south of the northern part of the city is going to be key. So I want to look at the future, and I want to, we deserve a public transit that is going to be fast and take us when we need to go.
And now we're going to hear from Grace.
Okay, well, thank you so much about the Vermont corridor being 12 and a half miles. I would say that the mileage within CD10 is very minimal because it's only from Vermont at Beverly to Vermont at Olympic. That is part of CD10. I would say that because there is already the red line, the purple line, the exposition line, that a bus rapid transit would be the right path for us to take on the Vermont corridor. And I would be remiss if I did not talk about the fact that we really do need to beef up safety on Metro and the buses, because people are afraid of taking Metro at this time. I've heard of everybody who, from people who would love to ride the Metro being scared of riding the Metro at this point. I'm someone who says free rides for everybody would also make it easier for people to use mass transit.
Thank you. And now we're going to take it over to Andrew on behalf of Heather.
So the councilwoman's answer would be twofold. The first one is that we're already working with community members and community organizations to get dedicated bus lanes and dedicated buses down the Vermont corridor between Beverly and Olympic. But when it comes to really connecting our system together and connecting that heavy rail system, the red line and the purple line that we have in Council District 10 to the exposition line down at USC and at Vermont and Expo, really it should be light rail. Because you want to have that steady connection between the different lines, and you want to make sure that they are all passable and impacted. Once you get south of Vermont, I think you could go either way. You could continue with light rail, or you could do bus rapid transit. But given the grade of the streets and the hill that's created as you climb up Vermont towards the Griffith Observatory, I think you really need to have light rail in that section.
Thank you. And Michael is going to take it away with the next question.
Thank you, Adrian. So last year we worked with the Bureau of Engineering, LADOT, the City of Culver City, Caltrans, LA County Flood Control, and the Army Corps of Engineers to complete a feasibility study on extending the Bionda Creek bike path east to Venice and Cochrane. This year, there was an opportunity to apply for construction funding through ATP Cycle 7 and maybe even get this thing done by the Olympics. So the question is, will you commit to seeing the Bionda Creek bike path extension through to completion, whether it's the ATP grant or we need to search for another funding source if we don't get it? And will you push for the project to be completed before the Olympics? And we're going to start with Eddie.
The answer to both your questions is yes and yes. I would do both. I think it's very important to have a connective city. I live in Mid-City, right there near Washington and Hauser, so right next to Culver City. And so connecting the Ballona Creek bike path is very, very important, I believe, to make sure that folks can go from one end all the way to the other. I know the council finally put in some money this year. I would double down on that and also help you raise funds to make sure that can happen if possible, and connect you to people to make sure that can happen as well. And it has to get done by the Olympics. When we know the Olympics is coming, we want to showcase our city. We don't want a congested city. We want a city that has more parks. We want a city that has natural wildlife. We want a city that has natural plants. We want a city that people can enjoy and breathe clean air. And extending the Ballona Creek bike path allows us to do all of those goals in a good, succinct timeline.
Thank you. Aura.
A District 10 deserves to have a Ballona Creek bike path. And I was very excited when I visited, this project right outside my neighborhood council, boundaries. So I support very much this type of projects. We saw the regularization around the river, the LA River. We can also have that, and we can eventually, connect the beach with other places. If we don't have the funding as your councilwoman, I will make sure that we find the funding through other grants or through finding the funding just in the city. I also think it's important to speak about the amount of community engagement that this project has been taking, and how important it is for us to include our community in the process so that everybody can have their answers heard and they can also be part of the solution. So yes, I support it.
Thank you. Grace?
Most definitely, we support the Ballona Creek bike path extension. It makes perfect sense when you have a natural site in which you can add miles for bike paths. I saw a rendition, I think it was on Carmona, where what it is now and what the future could potentially be with, trees and a bike path and, benches for people to sit in. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for people to slow down and enjoy what natural resources we have. And of course, if we're going to do this, I would be fully supportive. And that means with the power of the office that we can help with funding, whether it's in grant writing or asking the state to bring in more funding. This is something that helps everybody in every sense of the word. And of course, if we're going to be building this, then we want it before the Olympics. So I will do everything I can to ensure that we have better, safe access for everybody prior to that 28 Olympics.
Thank you. Andrew?
So the first thing that everyone should know is that Councilwoman Heather Hutt is the fiscal sponsor for the study. She is very passionate about this project to extend the Ballona Creek bike path. And as a bicyclist, it's something that she wants to follow through and wants to see done by 2028. And so we funded the study. We're happy to have the feasibility study completed now. And now we're moving forward with motions onto pay for the actual project. This project would go from National and Jefferson, where the bike path currently ends, all the way to Venice and Cochrane, where Ballona Creek goes underground. And it's an important project because there are very few places in the city of Los Angeles where you can build a dedicated bike path that does not interact with traffic, right? With cars, buses, and so forth. And so she's very, very committed to this project. She's very passionate about it, and looks forward to seeing it through in the next 4 years.
Thank you. And Reggie? Did we lose Reggie? Okay, we seem to have lost Reggie. So we'll try to get him back, but I will move on. Over to Ellery for our next question.
Hi, our next question is about Venice Boulevard. Venice Boulevard is on the high injury network, 6% of streets that cause 70% of injuries and deaths, and is slated for both protected bike lanes and dedicated bike lanes on the city's mobility plan 2035. Our question is, will you commit to adding protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes on CD10's portion of Venice Boulevard, even if it requires removing travel lanes or parking spaces? Aura, we'll start with you.
Yes, and absolutely. And as someone that already has experience doing this type of process and going through this on the West Adams Boulevard bike lanes, I can tell you that it can really transform an area. I'm really looking forward as a councilwoman to see injecting more resources in these main corridors, especially in District 10, where they're so dilapidated, where we can have even more trees, dense housing, and just start seeing these main corridors coming back to life. So I absolutely support the dedicated bus lanes as well, and also bike lanes. I envision also a process where the community can come and really get educated about the benefits of this of having bike lanes and also bus lanes, dedicated bus lanes, so that they can also participate and not have so much pushback, but be part of the solution.
Thank you very much. We will go to Grace next.
I'm definitely someone who supports the protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes because I see that happening in other countries. I can tell you that the Venice Boulevard portion that you guys had shown us was actually not part of CD10, but I think I would welcome it into and increase into CD10 because Venice is one of the 6 or 9 streets that are really dangerous within CD10. Besides Venice, it's Pico, Washington, Adams, Crenshaw, Normandy, Western. I mean, these are places where we need to slow things down. And if we can bring in the protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes, I think that would be a huge win for everybody. Oh, look, Reggie's back.
Okay. They were having technical stuff going on, but
Yeah. Power outage over here.
Power outage. Well, you look like you're on your phone. Luckily it was charged.
It's like at 1%, so I don't know how far I can go, but let's give it a shot.
All right. Oh man. Okay. Well, if you're on 1%, maybe we'll go back to the last question really fast and give you an opportunity to answer it. The question was about Ballona Creek, and will you commit to seeing the Ballona Creek bike path extension through to completion? We just completed a feasibility study. Whether it's the ATP grant that is likely going to be applied for or another funding source, and will you push for the project to be completed by the Olympics?
Short answer is absolutely. As someone that sits on the Olympic Committee for the state of California, imperative. I mean, you have no.
Okay. All right. We're going to get through this, guys, together. I think it was Grace that went, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to turn this over to Andrew.
Thanks, Michael. So the answer is an emphatic yes. The councilwoman had introduced a motion in the last few weeks, and it was in Transportation Committee last week and was approved and should be approved by the City Council next, of identifying where we can put in dedicated bike lanes and bus lanes along Venice Boulevard. In general, the area between Fairfax and Arlington makes the most sense, and that's most of Council District 10 because it's extremely wide. Anyone that knows Venice Boulevard knows that we have huge lanes, over 3 lanes in each direction, plus parking, and a huge median, which is underutilized, and it's actually zoned as open space. And so this is something that needs to be done. The project that was built over on the west side in Council Districts 5 and 11 and a small portion of CD10 should be extended all the way to Arlington. And once again, it comes back to money because the city doesn't fund these projects, and we need to put more money behind it so that we can actually build it.
Thank you. Eddie, over to you.
The answer is absolutely yes. I believe that budgets are moral documents and tells us our priorities. And I would prioritize a livable city. a city that puts people first in our community. And so absolutely we need to have protected bike lanes. I would also just raise that 84% of the people who would use the buses in the bike lanes will more likely be low income. This is about equity. This is about racial equity, this is economic equity as well, and making sure everyone in the community feels that they belong in our neighborhoods, and making sure that we write the budget to make sure that we can fund these bus lanes and make sure that we can have a city that is affordable, livable, and walkable for everyone in our community in CD10, and we deserve it in CD10.
Thank you. All right, moving on, I think I am up next. So this question is about Measure HLA. We've already mentioned it a bit tonight. It used to be called Healthy Streets LA. Now it's Measure HLA as our ballot measure that would require the city of Los Angeles to implement its own Mobility Plan 2035 whenever it repaved streets. We spent much of 2022 gathering over 100,000 signatures to qualify it, including close to 7,000 signatures from CD10 residents. And it will be on the ballot this March. After a 2-decade high of pedestrian deaths and more kids dying from cars than from guns in Los Angeles, we feel we need to urgently make our streets safer, which the mobility plan would do. The measure has been endorsed by the LA Times, the LA County Democratic Party, LAUSD, and many labor, business, and environmental orgs. So the question is short and sweet. What do you think of the concept of the city automatically implementing the Mobility Plan 2035 whenever it repaves streets? And will you endorse Measure HLA? And we're going to start with Grace.
You know, as I was answering in one of my earlier questions, of course, HLA is a wonderful measure that will have a minimum of 500. It could possibly be 600 or 700 miles in the city that can be repaired. So this is wonderful because it is more cost efficient that when you are repaving the road that you just put in a bike path. So I think that's a wonderful idea. And, you know, looking at Street LA's blog talking about the CAO's cost estimates being misleading, we totally understand when someone wants something to be killed, they put out misleading information. We know by common sense that slowing things down will save lives. And that is what we need in the city of Los Angeles. I know that people come first, not cars. And so we need to support this and pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. So just for the record, that was an endorsement. Yeah, okay. Andrew, over to you.
Sure. So as I stated earlier in this conversation, Councilwoman Heather Hutt has endorsed Measure HLA. We had a hearing in Transportation Committee last week, in which we had reports on mobility plan and the implementation thereof. You should know that only 8% of the bicycle enhanced network under the mobility plan has been implemented since 2015. Only 15% of the neighborhood enhanced network. And the reason why is because the city doesn't have metrics to evaluate transportation projects. They don't have a 5-year capital plan to build those projects, and they don't put the funding behind them. As I said before, we spend roughly 25 million on Vision Zero. On top of that, we only spend another 10 million a year on mobility plan projects. And so you have to properly fund them, and you have to vote yes on Measure HLA, because that's the only way the city will do it. And the next thing Streets for All should do is do a bond measure to actually pay for those projects, because the city doesn't have the funding, and we're going to have to find it.
For the record, we tried to do a bond measure, and it's not legal to qualify a bond measure through signatures. But thank you it's a good suggestion. Over to Eddie.
Absolutely, I've endorsed HLA, and community members think it's 100% what we need to go. I think what HLA says is what we try to say during People's Budget LA when we created it with Black Lives Matter and so many other organizations at the organized with LA Voice, that the city has money. We have the money to actually do the things we need to do to improve our city, to have safe streets. It's whether we're willing to spend the money, whether we're willing to say, let's reimagine what public safety looks like in our community and actually delay, build crosswalks, actually delay the timing when people can cross those crosswalks, actually put in protected bike lanes, do the things that keep us actually safe in our community. And we can do it as we're repaving the streets. And that gets a cost-effective measure. I think it's brilliant. I think it's great that community has advocated for it. It's one of the things I've heard. They've knocked on over 4,000 doors in our community. They've talked about HLA. They are excited about being able to walk their children to school and not have to play chicken with the cars who are zooming down the streets.
Thank you. Aura.
So I have been a big supporter of Measure, HLA before, through my organization, through the Sierra Club Angeles chapter, we have endorsed it. Personally, I have endorsed. What I think is worth pointing is that it took an organization like yours to really force a plan that is already supposed to be in place in Los Angeles. So as a councilwoman, I am going to be the kind of councilwoman that is not just going to give you broken promises, especially when it comes to mobility justice, but it's actually going to get things done and make things work. Because having a plan and then having to have a measure for us to implement the plan is just really, to me, it really is a testament of the lack of leadership that we have had at City Hall recently. Putting the funds is also important, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to see. So let's go HLA.
Thank you. Over to Katrina for our last question, curated question.
Thanks, Michael. This question is about the La Brea bus lanes. Last year, bus priority lanes were installed on La Brea Avenue between Sunset and Olympic. They've been a great success, reducing transit riders' travel time. Metro wants to extend the bus lane south through CD10 to Coliseum Street. Will you champion an extension of the peak hour La Brea bus lane south through CD10 to Coliseum? Why or why not? First is Heather.
Thank you for the question. So yes, the reason why this project has not gone through Council District 10 at this point is because of the lack of outreach that Metro has done. They did very poor outreach back in 2021 during the pandemic and held one virtual meeting to try to gain support. There's not one letter of support, not one neighborhood council, one not community group south in Council District 10 that supports this project. And so it's really the onus is on Metro and DOT to do proper outreach. We've been meeting with them, explaining to them this need and explaining to them that they need to implement mitigation measures before they can put this project in place. And as I said before, you need indigenous outreach. You need advocates that are from the community, that understand the community, so they can explain the benefits of this project. There are 65,000 cars that go through that area every day and only 8,000 bus riders. And so someone needs to go out there and explain to the community the benefits of this project, because no one has done that so far. And that's why there is no support to go south into Council District 10.
All right. Next will be Pastor Eddie.
Yes, I would support the extension of the peak hours. And I believe the way you do that is by organizing your community. I think it is the council person's job to go out and organize a neighborhood. You represent the people, you should go out and figure out what the people need, engage the local community groups, engage the local churches, engage the local nonprofits and CDCs, bring together round tables and get the data that you need. And so that's what I would do as a city council person. I would go and have the conversations. I would convene the tables. I would actually check out to see what the community wants to do, and then what is the best pathway forward. I believe that's how you continue to serve the resident CD10 and ensure that every voice is actually heard at the table, to make sure that we have a CD10 that is inclusive as well, and that people can enjoy the bike lanes, they can enjoy the bus lanes, and that they can enjoy getting through the city rapidly, affordably, and knowing that they are safe doing it as well. It's a priority for me. I think it should be priority for CD10.
Thank you. Next is Aura.
As someone that relies on taking public transit to get to places and, my moped, I definitely support the extension of the peak hours for the La Brea, bus lane, especially as it connects to more, communities like, that are center for people to get to work and such. I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation about, supporting these bike lanes. And I hear this often in my neighborhood council as a neighborhood council representative when people often feels that these decisions never reach them. And as your councilwoman, I am committed to reach out to all of the neighborhood councils, all of the neighborhood groups, businesses, to make sure that they understand how these changes is going to impact them and also benefit them. Because one bus carries more people than just one car. So I definitely support it.
Thank you. And finally, Grace.
You know, I think it makes sense that once Metro had put out the extension of peak hour La Brea bus lanes, it went all the way south. It didn't end at Olympic. It's been stuck at Olympic. And we have someone who's on chat, the president of West Adams Neighborhood Council, who just shared that they are in support of extending the La Brea South bus lanes south to Coliseum, from Olympic to Coliseum. And I think that makes perfect sense. You can't say we're having this huge, wonderful bus lane and then all of a sudden it stops when it doesn't actually get to the destination it needs to. Sort of like what we do with Metro and not going all the way to LAX. There are decisions made for political reasons and not for people to actually get to where they need to go. I'll be a candidate and I be a councilwoman who does right by the people.
All right. Thanks so much. Back over to Michael for audience questions.
Thank you. So we have a ton of audience questions. I'm going to say that we'll still do a minute per, but if you can not take the full minute and answer it still, we can obviously get through more questions that way. I don't have a way to put an on-screen timer, so I'm just going to hold up my phone when there's about 10 seconds left so you know that time is running out. And we are going to start with Aura, and then Grace, and then Andrew, and then Eddie. So the first question with, I've never seen this many votes on a single question, 23 upvotes, is what is your opinion of the street gates with locked pedestrian doors in mid-city that force the elderly, children, and wheelchair users to detour half a mile just to reach their bus? As a council member, would you consider restoring pedestrian access through the gates at Pico and Wilton in Country Club Park? And we will start with Aura.
Yes, I'm glad that someone is asking this question because it's been somewhat a hot topic in the community here in Mid-City. And I have been door knocking and, reaching voters in that area. And it's unbelievable to me. There's some places in Mid-City you can get through. So what about the people that, have mobility issues? What about if you're just late to work? And the fact that they have keys and only give it to certain people in their own community, I think we have to change that mentality. LA has to be open for everyone, especially these places. So I believe that we need to open the gates. I believe that people should be allowed to go through those neighborhoods. And I have been very supportive of those efforts on the ground. So thanks for that question.
Thank you. And it looks like one of my steering committee members discovered Zoom's built-in timer. So if you can keep doing what you're doing, I'd appreciate it. Over to you, Grace.
It's simple. Taxpayers do not have power to do more than what others get to do. I think we need to be equitable in how justice is played out. And I think access to the sidewalk that we all pay for, the roads that we all pay for, means that we should all have equal access. And so I would say yes to opening the pedestrian gates.
Thank you. Over to you, Andrew.
Sure. So those folks should know that the pedestrian gates and the alley gates that are in Council District 10 and in other places throughout the city of Los Angeles, most of them have been in place since the 1980s and the early 1990s. And they were put in place really to deal with street gangs at the time, to deal with drugs and prostitution and other criminal activity. And so, you have to understand that it's not as easy as just going in and taking the gates down. It doesn't work that way. This is a litigious process that has gone on for a very long time, and I don't even know if it's legally possible at this point. But it's something certainly worth exploring. That has just come to our attention in the last week. And so we're starting to investigate it and really trying to learn about this process. But we want to really understand what it would take to actually get this done and then share that information with the community. So we look forward to continuing to have this conversation, not just in Country Club Park, but there are other neighborhoods and communities in Council District 10 that have this same issue.
Thank you. And Eddie.
Yes, free the people. That's what I'm for. So let's open the gates. I would talk with the neighborhood residents around though to make sure what time should we open these gates up for folks, and making sure that people can enter and move during the highest parts of the day. But then also making sure that when we do that, we also, if we need ambassadors programs into the community so people can feel safe in their communities, we can do that as well. That's something you talk to the residents about, figure that part out. But taxpayer dollars means that you should have access to things that you pay for. Sidewalks are free. It's public property. It's easy as that for me. So I would say let's free the people, let's free the walkways, and let's negotiate the times in which those are open for everyone to use.
Thank you very much. Grace, you'll start on this question. Koreatown is the most park-poor neighborhood in the city. In 2021, local residents and the neighborhood council proposed turning a stretch of 6th Street into a public plaza. 70% of survey respondents are in support. Do you support the pedestrianization of 6th Street? And do you have any other ideas to increase park space in Koreatown and CD10?
You know, I'm someone who actually fought for parks. I helped bring grants, spent years bringing the state money to CD10, to Koreatown. But it was CD10's office who chose not to sign the paperwork and sent the $10 million back to the state. So I'm someone who's always been supportive of more parks because I understand how poor park we are up in the Koreatown portion of CD10. As far as bringing about more walkable space, I am definitely in favor of that. I don't know where it would make the most sense. I want to find a place that will make the most sense because there are businesses, and I don't know how we make it so that there is good traffic flow for everybody and have pedestrian walkways being increased as well, because parks aren't just green spaces. I also thought rooftops would be great as well.
Thank you. Andrew.
So the first thing everyone should know is that we're actually in the process of awarding a project right now to build the first new park in Koreatown in decades, and it's at the Pio Pico Library. It's called the Pio Pico Library Park. And so that park should be under construction sometime this year and built out by 2026. And so we're really looking forward to that project. In terms of the 6th Street pedestrianization and closing down 6th Street, the councilwoman is very supportive of doing that, at least on a portion of 6th Street. We're working on designing a pilot project right now to get the community out there to see what it would look like, particularly between Normandy and Catalina. It's a little more difficult once you get east of Catalina because there's a gas station right on the corner, but that's the area that we really want to look at and put that in. And so we want to do this pilot project, and if people like it, then we want to move forward with permanent implementation. It needs to be done. You need to provide more open space in Koreatown, and these are just two of many ways to do it.
Thank you. Eddie.
Yes, so I could support the pedestrianization of streets. I would want to do a community study, talk to local neighborhoods, local stakeholders, figure out what they envision, what they imagine can be possible. I believe in green space, in park space. CD10 is the 4th worst when it comes to park space and green space in the entire city of Los Angeles. That's why my Community Development Corporation has invested over $8 million to create urban farming spaces, green spaces throughout CD10 to make sure that kids can have somewhere to go and play, whether that's on top of rooftops or park spaces as well. When it comes to parking, Lord, everyone knows that K-Town is horrible at parking. The tandem parking does not work in K-Town. And so I would want to bring you folks to talk about how do we change the parking situation in K-Town. Maybe that's, diagonal parking. Maybe there's When we build these affordable units, the transit-oriented communities, we build some public parking spaces for folks as well. But we got to solve that issue. I used to live in K-Town, and yes, we got to solve the parking situation.
Thank you. Aura.
So this is a project that I actually have been working on since 2011 when I first got elected to the Wilshire Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council. And we envisioned in those days a place where people could walk, small businesses could thrive, the local culture could, flourish. And I couldn't be more happy to see that this is actually finally kind of having teeth and happening. I support it wholeheartedly as a person that was, raised in a place where plazas are the epicenter of businesses and community. I believe that K-Town deserves that. And that is going to bring a beautiful and wonderful, not even revitalization, because K-Town is already very vibrant, but it's going to really be the example in the city of what we can do and what pedestrian safety can look like and what we can accomplish as a city when we put our heads together and communities together.
Thank you. Reggie, welcome back.
I'm so sorry.
Things happen. Did you hear the question or should I repeat it?
It was something about K-Town and its mobility, the fact that traffic is impacted adversely. Am I
no, I'll repeat the question. So Koreatown is the most park poor neighborhood in the city.
Okay.
In 2021, local residents and the neighborhood council proposed turning a stretch of 6th Street into a public plaza to pedestrianize it. 70% of survey respondents are in support. Would you support pedestrianizing 6th Street? And do you have any other ideas to increase park space in Koreatown and CD10?
Definitely support that. Koreatown, like most of the districts, like in South Central Los Angeles, which I've represented, we're park poor. And it's very, very important that we provide the resources, whether it's the going into looking at ways we can find funding to provide the parking to be able to do that, but to also complete those park projects in an efficient and equitable way. I've done quite a few projects when I was director of real estate for the city of LA to improve Koreatown, to make sure that they had not only memorial parks, but also to make sure that we had the kind of green space that would make it much more livable than it currently is now. It's become a little more modernization, a lot of high rises, and we do need to do a lot more to create the kind of space where people can enjoy and young people can work and have parks.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question. Andrew, you'll answer this one first. Metro's K line was an important investment in CD10, but it ends abruptly at the E line. Do you support efforts to extend it north to the D line and job centers beyond that and speed up the timeline? So this, I believe, would be the Crenshaw line northern extension. Over to you, Andrew.
So the answer is yes. Councilwoman Heather Hutt has been working with her staff and with the city of West Hollywood and with Metro on this project since she has been the councilwoman. And we're looking forward to getting this project built out. We've been working with them to make sure that they do outreach, particularly in the sections north of the 10 freeway in Council District 10. And this project needs to go all the way through West Hollywood and connect with the Red Line in Hollywood. And then also there's a spur that should go up to the Hollywood Bowl that never got built. And so all of that needs to be done. We're also working with the City of West Hollywood and Metro to sponsor or to advocate for and support a bill by Laura Friedman that would allow us to create an infrastructure financing district in this area to help pay for the project, because right now it's slated to be built in about 25 years, and that's just too far down the road. This will have one of the highest riderships, if not the highest ridership of any line that Metro has, and so it needs to get built, and we support it.
Thank you. Eddie.
Yes, I would support this wholeheartedly. I think it will help us move rapid transit, move people quickly throughout the city. It will also be an equitable distribution of resources, which is very, very important to my campaign, is make sure we have equitable distribution of resources and that folks can actually afford to live in Los Angeles. We have too many folks who can't afford cars, who are losing time with their family because they are in cars. And so this helps to get people out of cars. I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Reggie?
Absolutely support it. I think in Council District 10 and in many disadvantaged communities, we are left behind other communities because they have the political willpower or they have the political backing of others to make this happen in their communities. And they are able to not only get it done, as it said earlier, that it take 25 years, it's absolutely insane that we have to wait 25, sometimes 50 years before we get the kind of rapid transit or mobility opportunities that other communities have. The plans are there. It's ready to go. We should not only support it, but we should make sure that it gets implemented in a timeline before we all die. I mean, let's face it. At the end of the day, a lot of these programs and lines that are built take so long to be done that a lot of us either forget it or the people who originally wanted to make it happen are gone. And we just need to make sure things get done now in our timeline.
Thank you. Aura.
I was going to say, Michael, before you go on, I put it in the chat, you cut off on a big part of the question for me at least, and I'm kind of gathering the answers, but if you could please repeat the question.
No problem. Metro's K line was an important investment in CD10, but it ends abruptly at the E line. Do you support efforts to extend it north to the D line and job centers beyond that? And would you work to try to speed up the timeline?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first immigrated to this country, I lived in New York. I went to college in New York. And New York has a very thriving public transit, very effective. Maybe not the best smelly, but it takes you places. You don't need a car, to get to places from New York. And I envision a Los Angeles where we can do the same. We're the second largest city in the country, and it's only fair for us. For people that live in South LA to be able to come to West Hollywood and such to work, or just really visit friends and recreate, I'm in full support. And as a councilwoman, I'm planning to continue speeding up this kind of projects and also continue building and supporting more projects that help people connect and bring more public transit to CD10.
Thank you. Grace.
I've had the opportunity to visit many a city, Chicago, Boston, Paris, Seoul, where, transportation is public and people use that to get around. The city of Los Angeles could do a far better job where if we actually went further and we had more cars as in bus links or train links is what I'm meaning here in cars. It would be helpful if the destinations such as the Hollywood Bowl was in a walkable distance, right? We continue to build things without having the destination that we really want to go. Earlier, I talked about the line not going all the way to LAX. How are we supposed to be a first-class city if we don't actually have public transportation that gets us to the places we need to go? So the answer is yes, I support it, but I want us to make sure it gets to the final destination that people want to be at.
Thank you. So I want to try to get to 2 more audience questions, but to do that, we would need to do about 30 seconds each. So let's see if we can do that. This one's going to start with Eddie. The question is, what would you do to help make taking public transportation safer? As a mom with a young child, I have had unsafe experiences on public transit and no longer take it because of this. Starting with you, Eddie. The timer will still say 1 minute, but if you guys can do less, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So 3 things I would do to make riding on public transit safer. 1, I would ensure we have working street lights, right? So when you go into public transit, you can feel like you can get there safe. Also, make sure you have ambassadors on not only the platforms of our train stations, but also on our buses and trains as well, to make sure people can feel safe as they go. I'm not talking about police officers, I'm talking about non-armed ambassadors, community residents on the buses and trains in our community. Last but not least, make it free, right? Make it free so people can feel like they can actually get onto the buses and trains and not be stopped for riding while Black or brown or API or poor. We need to fight poverty, not the poor, and so this is one way we can do it.
Thank you, Reggie.
As the former chair of public safety, it is paramount that we make all these transportation vehicles safe, especially buses. I think what was said earlier about having unarmed, well-trained ambassadors, if you want to use that word, individuals who are trained not only in mental health problems, but able to deal with people in a non-lethal way, to be on the transit system. We could create an army, a cadre of individuals who are on the buses that will be able to deter any of this, and also have the opportunity to be able, if it escalates to a point where you do need to call in Los Angeles Police Department, that they have the ability to be able to make that happen. I think passengers will feel safer when they see these individuals, as they're not only there, but they're well uniformed, that you know who they are, and they're equipped with the kind of people skills that you need to be able to make people feel safe and comfortable.
Thank you. Aura?
I want to see increase on the ambassador program. I have some now trains, and it's great to see them. It makes me feel really great and safe. I want to also see them in the platform. A family of a young gentleman in December around USC died, stabbed in a fight. So, when those moments happens, I also want to see maybe like a sensor or a phone or something where people can alert authorities, so that when there is a moment of an emergency. I also want to see more improved infrastructure where people can access a metro and leave metro places in an easier way, and also more lighting. And I want the ambassadors to be trained in dealing with highly, unlikely situations like mental health moments, or other things that don't often happen in our streets.
Thank you. Grace?
Earlier, I shared that it would be nice if metro fares were free, because I thought that when more people are riding it, there would be more safety. I also think there's accountability in how people behave on public transportation. If people are held accountable to a standard that we all agree to, and they're not allowed, then they need to be taken off the bus. And it could be, individuals who say, okay, we've had enough. You're now starting to scare us. They've got to de-escalate the situation, right? I'm not saying you have to call the police, but maybe it's just the employee saying, this isn't right. We need you off. You're making it a very uncomfortable situation for all the riders here. So if we have that kind of standard, I think we can bring back civility and have safer rides for everyone.
Thank you. Andrew?
So in general, the buses and the trains in the city and throughout the metro system have gotten much safer over the last 7 months, and it's shown in the uptick in ridership rates, which are getting close to pre-pandemic levels. I think the reality is that Metro's done a much better job over the last 6 months of increasing safety, but it's really a tiered amount of safety. If you go on the light rail lines, they feel very safe. There's plenty of ambassadors. There's mental health workers. There's a lot of activity going on. On the buses are probably the least safe of our system, and the subway system, the red line and the purple line. The biggest issue there is they don't clean the trains enough, and people don't want to ride them because you don't just have the presence of those ambassadors and the presence of law enforcement when you need it. And so you really need to do a lot more in terms of the buses and the subway system in order to make them safe and have people actually ride them. And the way that you do that is you need to spend the resources and put people on there. You don't need people with guns. You just need people that can talk and communicate with folks and help them in the situation that they're in.
Thank you. Man, you guys are politicians. I said 30 seconds and everyone took the full minute. So I don't think we're going to have time for another audience question. Before we get to closing questions, Reggie, given the connection issues, if you don't mind, I wanted to do a quick lightning round to just give you an opportunity to answer. If it's too rushed or you don't have an answer, no problem.
Sure.
I think you cut out on Bayona Creek, if I'm not mistaken. So
I don't know how much you got.
I think we got that you supported it. So there's
Yes.
3 questions, just really quickly. On Venice Boulevard, the question was, will you commit to adding protected bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes on CD10's portion of Venice Boulevard, which ends just east of Arlington, even if it requires removing travel lanes or parking spaces?
Absolutely. And I wish I had it when I was a young kid in the 70s riding my bike. So I know how dangerous, physically, I know how dangerous it is to ride along that area. And so that experience, I think will do well in explaining to other council members how important it is that we do have the kind of safety precautions that you're talking about.
Thank you. The next question was about Measure HLA. And the question was, what do you think of the concept of having the city automatically implement its own mobility plan when repaving streets? And will you endorse the measure?
So I'm for the city moving ahead, but I have an issue with accountability as someone coming from Sacramento, sending money down to the local level and hoping that things get implemented, sending billions of dollars, and not having it implemented in the way that it should be. And so I think we need to have some accountability measures to where it gets done on time, on budget, and that, most important, that is what the community actually wants, and it doesn't deviate from that.
Thank you. The last question was, will you support an extension of the La Brea bus-only lanes south through CD10 from Olympic to Coliseum?
Oh, yes, especially with the Olympics coming. I think that would be something that we shouldn't even think about. We're going to have to move people back and forth when the 28th Olympics come. And we're going to have to move a lot of people throughout Los Angeles during that time. And if we don't put in the kind of bus lanes to be able to connect to not only Coliseum and the other sports venues, and then we're going to have a whole lot of problems. And so we need to put that infrastructure in now so that we're prepared in 2028.
Thank you. Okay, that ends the lightning round there. We're going to go to closing statements. Can everybody see the timer in the top right? If I don't share my screen, everybody can see that all right? Yeah. Okay, so Reggie, we're going to start with you, then Eddie, then Aura, then Grace, and then Andrew. So Reggie, whenever you're ready, please proceed with your closing statement.
Okay, and I want to thank everybody. Again, I apologize for my technical difficulties. I answered the questions hopefully as best I can, but most important that you see that we have a true commitment to the state of transportation in Los Angeles, especially what I learned when the 10 freeway was closed twice during 2 emergencies. We understand how important it is to make sure that our roadways and freeways are well open and that we're better prepared to move large groups of people as we prepare for the 2028 Olympics, but most important, making sure that people are safe in our communities. I make that commitment to not only to everyone here, but I make that commitment as my role in the Assembly, and I'll continue it as my role on the Los Angeles City Council. So again, I want to thank you. And again, I apologize for my technical difficulties, but I'm here today.
Thank you very much. Eddie.
I want to thank Streets for All and the other candidates for showing up tonight. For me, I believe we can break up the status quo. We've made a lot of great progress in the community organizing, figuring out what do we need. HLA is one example of how we organize to figure out what we need. My promise to you is, as a city council person, to work with you, to do co-governance, to make sure your voices are heard when we are making these decisions, and to make sure it gets implemented. City Hall's implementation problem, as we can see with Vision Zero, and that when we do that, we create new jobs. When we do that, we can create electrification and make sure that people who afford electric cars can charge in their own district. There's not charging stations in CD10. I know as an electric car owner. We can do this and make sure we have a city that is livable and affordable, a city where is walkable, where you can go out and we can have natural wildlife growing and you can walk by and smell the breeze of what CD10 is possible of. I want to do that with you. I want to do that, make sure that our streets are safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Aura.
So thank you for hosting this debate. I really appreciate it, especially in a time where it seems like climate is not a big topic in conversation and politics in Los Angeles. So, I'm not just a candidate here, but I'm your ally in the fight for a greener and a more pedestrian-friendly District 10. I envision a community with free, safe, and efficient transit that prioritizes people over cars. And mobility justice is not just a term for me, it is at the core of my upbringing and the driving force behind my vision for District 10. So I proudly support Measure HLA and advocating for a comprehensive mobility plan that includes more bike lanes and dedicated bus lanes. And, I hope that we can all together transform Los Angeles into a mobility justice hub, setting the example for the entire country. So, I'm asking all of you that watch this debate to join me in this transformative journey to create a city where sustainability, accessibility, and justice thrives hand in hand. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Grace.
Thank you, Streets for LA, for hosting tonight. We really appreciate you asking the right questions to get us talking about important issues. And the really important one is HLA. Come March, we need to pass it. We need to make sure that we are efficient in how the city spends our limited budget. And it's also really important that you all join in the Saturday, January 27th, Dying in LA. I'll be there and I hope you will too, because we need to let everybody know that the 330 deaths last year is just too much. We need to take a stand, and I am that person who will always stand with the people, which is why I brought numerous lawsuits against the city when they choose politics over people, over fair representation, over greening, healthy trees. They talk a good game. It's always, oh, when we get rid of a tree, we plant it with two. Problem is, it's a huge, mature shade tree, and then it becomes two little sticks. I'm going to be someone who represents the people.
Thank you very much. And Andrew.
Thanks again to Streets for All and all the participants this evening. Councilwoman Heather Hutt, thanks you for being here. As was mentioned earlier in the program, she's under the weather and she can't even talk right now. So that's why I'm filling in for her this evening. In general, you should know that Heather is a lifelong resident of the district, and she understands the needs of our community better than anyone else currently running. She has a long history of accomplishment here and has the networks necessary to get results done. And she's already implementing successful programs to address the transportation issues and challenges in our community and our city. Additionally, she's not a career politician looking for her next seat. She comes from the trenches of implementing policy and building coalitions. She's the chair of the Transportation Committee, and all of the projects you talked about this evening, she is working on. And as a citywide leader on transportation issues, she will be your advocate to get these things done. I ask that you vote for Heather Hutt for City Council and Council District 10. And once again, thank you for your time tonight.
Well, I really want to thank all the candidates for showing up. Again, we wish Heather our best wishes for her health. And thank you to the audience. It's one of our most popular debates. You guys are a popular bunch. I did want to let everyone know that Streets for All endorsement questionnaires will be hitting your email boxes tomorrow morning. So we are giving the campaigns a week to fill those out. We hope you will return them. And regardless of who you vote for, we encourage everybody to vote. This is expected to be a very low turnout election, and we really want to change that. And your vote does matter. So thank you, everybody, for your time, and have a good night. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.